Okay, so get ready, because we're about to hear how media analyst Ricky Sutton used AI to basically time travel through millions of years of communication history
While driving.
while driving in his car, from like grunts to algorithms in one deep dive.
One deep dive.
Pretty wild, right?
It is fascinating. He did this whole research project using just voice commands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was talking to Microsoft's Copilot AI
While on the road?
while on the road.
That's hands-free learning.
Talk about hands-free learning.
And, Ricky's the author of Future Media.
Right.
So he's trying to figure out which news companies are going to win in the AI age.
Yeah, he thinks the winners are going to be the ones who create the most human-like experiences.
Using AI.
Using AI, yeah.
And that's why he decided to use AI to explore the entire evolution of human communication.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Like he's using the future to understand the past, to predict the future of media. I love it. Okay, so picture this. Ricky's cruising along, right? And he starts by asking Copilot about the very beginnings of human language.
The very, very beginning.
Like where and when did it all start?
And Copilot just goes right into it and paints this really vivid picture of how language evolved in stages,
Oh, okay.
So it starts with gestures and these basic vocalizations, almost like how you would communicate with a pet.
3 words.
Pre-words, pre-grammar, just trying to convey like basic needs.
Or basic needs and emotions.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then Copilot explains how all those early sounds and signals, they slowly developed into rhythmic chants.
Oh, okay.
Think tribal gatherings, rituals, all of that.
Like almost music as a stepping stone.
Yeah, that's one theory.
Okay.
But the big leap, according to Copilot, came with the development of symbolic systems.
So that's when...
That's when we started using specific sounds to represent objects, actions, and ideas.
Boom. Language.
Boom! The birth of language as we know it.
Okay, and then Ricky asks this great question. He's like, well, when did all these different languages start popping up?
Oh, that's a great question.
I know, right?
What did Copilot say?
Copilot's answer is migration and isolation.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like, if you think about it, early humans are spreading out from Africa. They're settling in all these new environments.
Right.
They start developing unique ways of speaking based on their surroundings and their experiences, right?
Yeah.
So it's like how dialects form.
Exactly, even within the same language.
I can almost hear the accents develop
I know, it's so cool to think about.
as they're branching out.
And Copilot even brings in the geography, talking about how mountains and rivers would have isolated these groups even further.
So different landscapes.
Different landscapes.
Different lifestyles.
Different ways of talking about the world.
Different languages.
Exact.
Wow, this is fascinating.
So then, Ricky goes to the super interesting question. What are the recurring themes across the 7,000 plus languages that we have today?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think there wouldn't be that many common threads, right?
You would think, but Copilot points out that even with all those variations,
variation.
there are still similarities in how we structure language. Underneath it all, yeah. Like phonetics, the study of speech sounds,
Okay.
and grammar, the rules for putting words together.
So even though the words themselves are different,
Totally.
the mechanics kind of
The mechanics are similar, yes.
share some universal patterns.
The universal patterns, exactly.
That's pretty wild.
I know. And then Copilot also talks about how we use metaphors and metonymies across cultures. Like we have this built-in need to use figurative language,
regardless of...
regardless of what language we speak.
That's so cool.
Isn't it? Whether you're speaking, Mandarin or Swahili, you're probably using metaphors
To spice it up.
to spice it up.
Okay, so then Ricky, he's on a roll with his question.
Yeah, he's got another one.
And he dives into nonverbal cues.
The power of nonverbal cues.
And he asks Copilot, like, how important are gestures, like facial expressions, in how we communicate?
How important are they?
And get this,
What?
93% of
Really?
communication might be nonverbal.
No way. 93%.
93%.
Wow.
This is from Albert Mehrabian's research,
Okay.
and it highlights how much we rely on body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions.
Especially for emotions that are hard to put into words.
Right, so even before we had language,
We had a way to communicate.
we were communicating through facial expressions, gestures,
Think about a smile, a frown.
universally understood.
Universally understood. Predates any language.
So interesting. Then, Ricky, he kind of shifts gears, and he brings up the anthropological perspective.
Oh, this is good.
I know, right? He asks about the difference between spoken and written communication.
That's a big one.
And Copilot explains how the advent of writing marked this major turning point in human history.
I can only imagine.
Right. It allowed us to store knowledge, create laws, build institutions.
It enabled complex societies?
Exactly. So it's like writing gave us a way to communicate across time and space.
To transcend the limitations of just spoken language.
Exactly.
That is so cool.
And this leads us to AI.
The arrival of AI.
And its potential to revolutionize communication.
Yet again.
Yet again.
Another turning point.
So Ricky's driving along, he's pondering all this history, and he just throws out this idea.
What's that?
He says AI could enable us to communicate digitally in a way, more human-like way.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So he's thinking beyond text, beyond images.
He wants something that captures the nuance of real-life conversation.
And he asks Copilot this. Isn't the future of communication all about making digital interactions more human?
And what did Copilot say to that?
Copilot says, you are correct. AI has the potential to make digital communication more human-like by enabling us to communicate more effectively, efficiently, and expressively.
Oh, wow.
So then Copilot just goes on to list all these advancements in natural language processing, voice, and speech synthesis.
The things that make digital communication more natural.
More expressive.
And then Ricky brings up AI avatars.
Like, aren't those supposed to be the next big thing?
Everyone's talking about them.
But he actually pushes back on the idea.
Really?
He doesn't think AI avatars are like the ultimate solution for human-like communication.
Okay.
He thinks there are better ways.
Like what?
Well, he challenges Copilot to explore alternative ways to create a more human experience, specifically in news media.
So he's bringing it back to his area of expertise.
Exactly, and Copilot gets really creative here. It suggests things like enhancing text with voice narration.
Oh, I like that.
Creating interactive podcasts, offering real-time transcription and translation.
All these innovative ways to make news consumption more like a conversation.
More like a conversation.
I love that.
And I even asked about personalization.
Oh, yeah, like AI tailoring news to each individual.
Exactly, and Copilot even suggests using AI to create personalized news feeds based on user preferences and reading habits.
So you get your news curated just for you.
All the fluff filtered out.
That's amazing.
Which is basically what Ricky does in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay, tell me more.
He throws out this wild idea for how a news organization like the Wall Street Journal could leverage AI.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's hear it. Welcome back.
Okay.
So remember, Ricky Sutton, the media analyst who was using AI to research the future of news.
Yeah.
Well, things are about to get meta because
Okay.
he's going to test out all his theories using the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like as his guinea pig.
Okay.
So last we left off, he was asking Copilot.
If it was possible to have an AI that knows.
Yes, if it was possible to create this system where you could load all of the Wall Street Journal's content into a language model.
So wild.
Imagine being able to have a conversation with an AI that's read every article the journal's ever published.
Wow.
Talk about a deep dive, right?
That's intense.
I know, and Copilot didn't even hesitate. Yeah, it said, yes, that is certainly possible. Language models are already capable of processing and understanding vast amounts of text data.
So theoretically, you could ask this AI anything about a company or an industry trend, a historical event.
Anything, and it would pull answers directly from the journal's archives.
It's like having a research assistant.
Who's read every issue?
Who's read every issue since the beginning.
Since its inception.
Wild. So what does Ricky do?
Well, he decides to test it out, of course.
Of course he does.
He asks Copilot to create a personalized newsfeed for him, focusing on media and technology, but pulling exclusively from the Wall Street Journal.
So he's like simulating what it would be like to have this AI-powered research assistant.
Precisely.
At his fingertips.
At his fingertips, yeah.
I love it.
And Copilot delivers.
What does it give him?
It presents 5 key stories with summaries of the main points and insights.
Okay, so let's dive into those stories.
Let's do it.
What's the first one?
The first one is about Google's cloud business. The Wall Street Journal was reporting a 15% jump in year-over-year revenue, largely fueled by their cloud computing division.
So even with all the hype around AI, it seems like the cloud is still a big deal for Google.
Yeah, the backbone of their growth.
Right, and what's interesting is that article emphasized how those cloud services are supporting their AI initiatives.
It's like their fancy algorithms need a ton of computing power.
Makes sense. All that data crunching from machine learning.
Has to happen somewhere.
All right, what's the next story Copilot pulls up?
This one's about Visa, and it's not so rosy.
Oh, no.
The Wall Street Journal reported that Visa is planning to lay off around 1,400 employees and contractors.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, and Copilot highlights that around 1,000 of those layoffs are in technology positions.
So even a giant like Visa is feeling the pressure.
It makes you wonder if this is a sign of things to come for other tech companies.
I hope not.
Yeah.
All right, what's next on this AI curated list?
Okay, this one involves Elon Musk and his AI startup XAI. The Wall Street Journal says XAI is in talks to raise funding that would value the company at $40 billion.
Wow, $40 billion.
That's a serious bet on Musk's vision for AI.
Investors love anything AI these days.
There's definitely a sense that this technology is going to be huge.
Speaking of Musk, what about his other company? You know, the one that shall not be named.
Oh, you mean X?
That's X.
Well, Copilot's next story is about how the Wall Street Journal conducted this experiment showing that X's algorithm pushes political content to users whether they want it or not.
Seriously.
Yeah, so like even if you're trying to avoid the political echo chambers,
X will drag you back in?
they found that new users are basically bombarded with accounts that support political figures like Trump and Harris.
That's wild.
Yeah, it raises some questions about algorithms.
And how they shape our news.
Exactly.
Okay, on to the final story.
The last story takes us to the Washington Post, where Jeff Bezos is defending their decision not to endorse a presidential candidate.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so Copilot pulls up this Wall Street Journal article where Bezos argues that endorsements undermine the credibility of a news organization.
Makes sense. It could create a perception of bias.
Exactly. And that could make it harder for people to trust their information.
It's a tough balancing act.
It really is.
Okay, so Ricky's got this awesome AI-powered news overview, all in audio form, all while driving.
Like he's hacking the news cycle.
Absorbing info at hyperspeed.
But he's not done yet, remember? His theory is that the most successful media companies will be the ones that create the most human-like experiences with AI.
So he wants to see how AI can take this personalized news feed to the next level.
Exactly. He decides to zero in on one company in particular, Google.
Okay.
He wants to know if Google is in danger of becoming the next IBM, a company that's still valuable but not as innovative or exciting.
Not the cool kid on the block anymore.
Exactly. And to answer that question, he turns to Copilot and the Wall Street Journal's archives.
This is where it gets interesting, right? He doesn't just want to read about Google. He wants to have a conversation with the information.
He's basically treating Copilot like a human expert.
On Google, someone who's intimately familiar with all of the Wall Street Journal's coverage.
Precisely. And Copilot is ready
To dissect Google's financial performance.
to analyze the sentiment.
Is Google on the path to becoming the next IBM?
We'll find out after the break.
Okay, so we're back. And remember how media analyst Ricky Sutton was using AI to kind of explore the future of news?
Yeah, it was wild. He was doing all this research hands-free while driving his car, just talking to Copilot.
Using voice commands to ask questions, it's so cool.
Super efficient.
And last we left off, he had asked Copilot to take a deep dive into the Wall Street Journal's coverage of Google, right?
Exactly. He wanted to know if Google's really on the path to becoming the next IBM.
Like, still valuable, but maybe not the innovator they once were. Kind of losing their edge.
Right. That's a big question these days with all the AI hype.
So what did Copilot find? What's the verdict on Google's future?
Well, Copilot started by analyzing the overall sentiment in the journal's reporting. And at first, it actually seemed pretty positive.
Really?
Remember that 15% revenue jump they reported, fueled by their cloud business?
Yeah, they seem to be doing all right financially.
Exactly. And Copilot pointed out that the journal highlighted how Google's investments in AI are starting to pay off.
Oh, interesting.
It even pulled up a quote from an analyst who said something like, Google is well positioned to capitalize on the AI revolution.
So not exactly sounding like a company in decline.
Nope, not at first. But then Ricky pushed back a bit. He brought up the fact that the journal had also mentioned a slowdown in Google's advertising revenue growth.
Ah, that's a big chunk of their business.
Huge. And Ricky was wondering if that slowdown was a sign of trouble, like maybe they're losing their grip on the ad market.
So is it a Google-specific problem, or is it something bigger? What did Copilot say?
Well, Copilot actually dug into those details and explained that the slowdown was probably due to just broader economic factors impacting ad budgets across the board. So not just a Google thing.
Oh, so everyone's feeling the pinch.
Pretty much. It even pulled up data from the journal showing that other big ad companies like Meta and Amazon were also seeing slower growth.
Okay, so not a red flag for Google, more of a sign of the times.
Exactly. But then Ricky, he wanted to know about Google's long-term strategy. Like, are they still way too reliant on ad revenue?
That makes sense.
And Copilot pointed out that Google has actually been diversifying its revenue streams.
Okay, good for them.
Yeah, with cloud computing and AI becoming more important for them, so they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Smart move.
Yeah.
So based on the Wall Street Journal's reporting, it sounds like Google's facing some challenges, but overall they're doing okay.
That's the gist, yeah. But remember, Ricky's original question was about whether Google is heading towards an IBM-like fate.
Right, and that's about more than just finances. It's about innovation and influence.
Exactly, and the journal articles didn't really get into that, so Ricky decided to bring in another perspective. He mentioned this article he'd read where a media expert suggested that Google might be losing its spark,
Oh, interesting.
becoming more focused on those enterprise solutions instead of those consumer products that everyone loves.
Okay, I can see the comparison to IBM there.
Right, and Ricky asked Copilot to weigh in to see if the data from the journal backed up that theory or contradicted it.
So Copilot was the judge.
Basically. And Copilot, being the amazing tool that it is, acknowledged the similarities between Google and IBM. It pointed out how they've both invested in things like cloud computing and AI,
So it's seeing the parallels.
but then it highlighted some key differences. Like, it pointed out that IBM mostly retreated from the consumer market.
And Google definitely hasn't.
Right. They've still got search, YouTube, Android, all of that. They're still a huge part of most people's lives in a way that IBM just isn't.
That's a big difference.
And Copilot pointed out how Google keeps investing in AI and things like augmented reality, which shows they're still trying to innovate for consumers.
Okay, so maybe it's not game over for Google's cool kid status.
Not necessarily. Copilot's analysis of the journal's coverage suggests that it all comes down to execution. Like, can Google turn all these investments into products and services people actually want?
It's like they have the ingredients, but the recipe isn't quite there yet.
Exactly. And for me, that's the most fascinating part of this whole deep dive. It's not about finding the right answers. It's about asking the right questions and then using the tools we have, like Copilot, to explore different perspectives.
I love that.
Because there's so much information out there these days, it can feel overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And Ricky, by doing all this, he was showing us how AI can help us learn more effectively, be more efficient, even when we're busy doing other things.
Especially when we're busy, right? Multitasking, getting it all done.
And it makes you wonder, what would you ask if you had an AI that had read every article from your favorite news source? What would you want to know?
That is a great question to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, who knows? Maybe someday we'll all have these AI assistants helping us navigate the world of information.
That would be pretty amazing.
It would be. And until then, keep exploring, keep being curious, and diving deep into all the topics that fascinate you.